Talking hardball, the bull and the better. Talking hardball, part of Betting Weekly. Handicappers, they're all in the know. Pick some winners and then we say, let's go. So come on. It's time.
Welcome into a brand new show here, Betting Weekly Hardball. I'm Doug Kezirian, joined by Wes Reynolds. And coming up on the show, we're going to break down the card in baseball today, also react to some current storylines on this reduced Monday of action. But very exciting day here, Wes. Awesome to be with you here on this debut show. It's going to be weekdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, also known as 11 a.m. Vegas time, which is where we are both located, Wes.
Yeah, good to be with you, Doug. Good to be talking sports and talking sports betting again. So nice to be able to do that. Looking forward to talking some action on the diamond today.
Yeah, just like the theme always on Betting Weekly, it's done by professional handicappers or pro bettors. We'll have various people throughout the work week on this show, and another show coming up in the next hour, Betting Weekly Fast Break, and it's for the betting audience. So we're going to break it down, talk unit sizes, talk money lines, things along those lines, value. So a lot of interesting matchups on the diamond, but I want to just tell you a little bit about who we are. I used to work at ESPN, hosted Daily Wager, the betting show, or the old name of the betting show there. First moved to Las Vegas in 2005, was covering the betting space over 2 decades ago, which is just crazy as I say that out loud, but just immersed in this space, have written columns and articles for various platforms, including ESPN, discussed betting on various platforms as well. So hopefully that wisdom that I've gleaned over the years will come out on this show, and we'll be able to break down a lot of games in a winning way. Wes, why don't you tell the listeners and audience a little bit about yourself?
Yep. Born and raised from Indianapolis, Indiana. Those that follow me on Twitter at Wes Reynolds1 know that I am a proud alum of Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. So I might talk about IU a time or 1,000 there on the Twitter, but been betting off and on actually since I was a teenager. I first got the bug. My mom used to manage an Italian restaurant in Indianapolis and had a regular that would bring in those little perforated parlay cards, which everybody's so familiar with, and buy me a card every week and see if I could pick a bunch of winners. And it's hard to hit a 5-teamer, Doug, by the way. That doesn't mean bettors are not trying to do so, but that's how I got the bug. Have been at a variety of different platforms, still do some work for VSiN, out here in Las Vegas, and excited to be with you here at Bet Rivers and talking ball.
Yeah, good stuff coming up on this show. A lot of exciting. I believe my first bet was a $5 wager on the Super Bowl in 5th grade. I think I took the points with the Broncos, and it did not go so well for so many years. The Broncos,
and you were hooked for life. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's when I thought you could only bet the Super Bowl. So I waited a full year for the next time I could wager. But no, we have action throughout the day here on the diamond. Let's get to a couple of the marquee games that really pretty obvious. And we want you to join the conversation as well. Let us know your thoughts. Hop in the chat. Ask us any sort of questions. We also got Mark B, the first one, saying, hello, boys. Great to have some MLB content. Byron, Douglas K. Wow, I get the full Douglas. So I like that. There we get the chiming in. So again, Wes and I will react to a lot of the feedback. So if we don't cover a game that you want some insight on, please let us know, or some futures, things along those lines. But the marquee game of the day is on national television, barring some blackouts, which we are certainly victimized here in Las Vegas. Is the Yankees hosting the San Diego Padres, a couple teams above 500. Yanks in first place, but they actually are a negative net on the money line over the season, obviously, because they're higher priced on the money line typically. So 3-game series opening up in the Bronx. Padres coming in second best record in all of baseball, but also the second best record in their division, behind only the Dodgers, just a half game back. Jackson Merrill at last checked, expected return from the injured list. 5 straight wins for the Friars. But Nick Pivetta on the bump. He's got an ERA under 2, but he'll touched up a little bit in his last game. So I'm kind of mixed feelings here. He hasn't pitched well at the stadium when he was with the Phillies, but don't want to put too much stock in that. I believe that was 2 years ago. Yanks coming in having lost 3 of 4. Carlos Rodon on the bump. Whip I like, under 1, obviously. 3.5 ERA. aside from Judge, I just don't really know what I'm getting. Yankees are a high price at $1.50, Wes. Padres are pass for me, and I'm close to pulling the trigger on San Diego here. Wes, I believe your mic is muted. I don't know if you hit that or that could be on my end. Okay, we're troubleshooting that. So Wes, stand by on that. I'll just read off a little bit more background on the game. So obviously the Yanks, I mentioned they're above 500, but if you bet the money line unit every game, you'd have negative money on it. You would have lost because their pricing here, and I think the pricing's a little inflated, although they've taken some money, I think, but $1.50 in the marketplace. I mentioned they've lost 3 of 4. Of course, Judge has been on an absolute tear. We'll get into some of his hit batter props, but 14-game hit streak. His MVP price has now moved to minus 1,000. So as you see it on the screen now, Judge to get a hit, almost $3, minus 278, but 2 hits plus 220. So that gives you something to think about. By the way, in case you're wondering, during this 14-game hit streak, he's had at least 2 hits in 9 of the 14 games. Now, the question is it predictive? Not necessarily who he was batting against. More familiar pitchers. This is interleague play. Obviously very different, but something to keep in mind when we all want to use past success, especially in baseball, such a stat-driven sport. We don't really know if that is going to translate accordingly based up, but Judge is on a tear, and there's something to be said about a hitter seeing the ball really well. And of course, Judge has been that all season. Wes, we got your mic working back? Okay, I'm not hearing it. Okay, so Wes we'll get back to that. But you see the Yankees, the over under 8 in this game. A little bit more juice on the under. In terms of the pitcher props, Pivetta, 5.5 strikeouts, overs minus 155. The unders obviously plus money. Rodon right there in the middle. I mentioned Jackson Merrill potentially coming back, the runner up in the the National League Cy Young. We'll try it again. Rookie of the Year a year ago. So for me, it's Padres. I haven't quite pulled the trigger on this high profile game. I just think obviously San Diego's home record's fantastic. But they're not exactly, chop liver on the road. Still have a winning record, 8-7, but they're going across country. They're playing the Yankees. They're playing a good team, but they've been in Pittsburgh, just swept the Pirates, and then took 2 games at home against the Giants to make up that 5-game win streak they're on. I'm not too worried about this Yankees team. I don't think they've quite put the pieces together. So if I'm getting plus money on the Padres, which I think have a superior lineup and have the superior pitcher, not that Rodon is a gas can or a tomato can for that matter, but I would have to take the Padres. So we'll get Wes's insight on that one in a little bit. But let's switch to the other marquee game, not to the same degree, but certainly worth discussing because it's a high-profile game given the success of both teams, and that's the Giants and the Cubs. Giants, really good record at 22-13 in that loaded at National League West. Cubs 21-14. A real surprise in my eyes. I did not expect their offense to be doing as well as they have been this year. So the Giants tied for the 3rd best record in baseball, and they are the 3rd best win percentage in the National League West. So that lineup, obviously, or that division, just been so, obviously profound this year to start the season. This Cubs team, they're probably going to sustain the offense.
Check
they
1,
are
2, 3.
Okay, we got you back. Nice. So, Wes, we've come back to we shifted to the Giants and Cubs here at Wrigley Field. It feels like a high price for the Cubbies at minus 165 on the north side, but Matthew Boyd's on the bump. I like the pitcher for the Giants in terms of watching him, Landon Root, but ERA over 5. Love his curveball, high whip. Cubs have the advantage. It does feel a little pricey at $1.65. How do you feel about this matchup on the north side?
Yeah, it's probably gotten a little bit out of hand, I think, from a money line standpoint. And with Roop, we're going to probably talk about this ad nauseum on this program. When I'm looking at how a guy is pitching, I'm looking more at the xFIP, the fielding independent pitching, than I am at the ERA. And Roop, ERA over 5, but the fielding independent's about 350. So that tells you he's due a little positive regression. But my angle on this game, I went with the other pitcher, and that was Matthew Boyd. And I think the money line is kind of telling you that the Cubs are getting the money here. I like Matthew Boyd here to have a very good start. Good pitching conditions, a little bit cold in Chicago, going to be about in the 50s tonight. If you look, the strikeout line is over 5.5, and he's only gone over that, I believe, 2 out of 6 times. However, you have to look at who he's pitched against. He's had to face the Padres, who you were just talking about a minute ago, hottest team in baseball, longest winning streak right now at 5 in a row, even though they're still second in that NL West. So he's had to face them twice. Then he's had to face the team that's number 1 in the NL West twice, and that's the Los Angeles Dodgers. Then having to face the Arizona Diamondbacks in the opening start on the road for the season. So he's faced 3 pretty tough teams that hit left-handed pitching very well and don't strike out a lot against left-handed pitching. I believe they're all bottom 3rd in the league. Meanwhile, top 3rd in the league in terms of strikeout rate against left-handed pitching are the San Francisco Giants. So I thought 5.5. I went with the over here, -124. You've even had some non-strikeout left-handed pitchers have decent strikeout numbers against the Giants. I think just a couple weeks ago, Kyle Freeland, who's not really a strikeout pitcher, had 5 strikeouts against the Giants. So Matthew Boyd over 5.5 Ks for me tonight.
It's interesting. I loved Boyd back when he was really in peak form at times with the Tigers and whatnot. This year, he's, you mentioned the advanced metrics, and just to bring some people who may not be totally locked into a lot of this, it could be intimidating sometimes. It's just basically what should the truer outcome of some of these balls in play should it be, the xFIP and some of the stats you use. And that's why you said it's the ERA for Roop should more be 3.5, not necessarily over 5 like it currently is. I think the 7.5 is a cheap number. Now at 8 runs, I wouldn't play it, but I think over 7.5 is a play for me. I mean, I think this Cubs lineup, again, highest team batting average in all of baseball, most runs scored in all of baseball. And as much as I like Roop, it's a lot of swing and misses to curveballs out of the zone when he's on a roll. But I just think he needs to tone it down a little bit. And I don't know if the Cubs are going to kind of cooperate and help him out at all. So I'm on over 7.5, and I still think this Giants offense can get to Boyd. And you mentioned some of the strikeout numbers. I still think we can scratch and claw our way to an over 7.5. Do you have any opinion on the over? I know you like the over in the Boyd strikeouts, but any opinion on the total here?
I think the total is about right. What we were talking about with Roop, he's got good strikeout stuff. He's over 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, but with a young pitcher, the walks get a little high, and he's I think at about 4.2 per 9 innings. So that's what you're worried about, I think, if you're backing Roop here in the game. So that lends some credence to your over. But Cubs got shut out in Milwaukee yesterday, didn't really do much, and then did a lot of their damage early on Saturday night in the first 5 innings, and then didn't score any runs the last 4. So, maybe due to kind of, I think, go against that power outage that they suffered in Milwaukee the last 1.5 games. But I think Boyd is going to get a leash here. Both the starters over the weekend in Milwaukee did go some distance. Shota, it went into the 6. So I think the bullpen really should be fine for these guys. They used Brad Keller, former starter in Kansas City, for the final 2 innings. So bullpen should be in good shape here. So I think Matthew Boyd probably goes in the 6. He has not had a quality start all year. He's gone 5 innings or more in all 6 of his starts. I think that continues tonight.
And that lends itself to the over and the strikeouts, just a manager feeling comfortable letting him go deep into the game. Nowadays, past 5 innings is considered deep. We want you to join the conversation. Let us know your thoughts, any questions for today's card or even futures market. Shane, been waiting for a show like this. Take us to the promised land. I like that, Shane, with the supporter of us. So
no pressure there from Shane.
Yeah, exactly. Wes, I want to put a bow on this game in the Bronx. Yankees, Padres. It's Padres or pass. I may, by the end of the show, be on the Padres. Any opinion here?
Same for me. It'd be Padres or pass, even though I do think Nick Pivetta has got a little bit of regression coming. 178 ERA, 322 on the XFIP. Now, that's not bad. If you're around 3 on that XFIP, you're pitching pretty darn well. But I wonder if we're getting some regression from Carlos Rodon at some point, because another thing that I look at for in pitcher regression is what's called, I call it BABIP, batting average balls in play. And you will see that not only for hitters, but pitchers. Carlos Rodon, a 184 so far this season. That is astonishingly low. 3 is kind of the barometer, 300 for batting average balls in play, where if you're below that, you might be considered a little quote unquote lucky, or if you're above that, you're unlucky. So I kind of think both of these pitchers have a little bit of regression coming. So 8 fair total for me. I'm out of the game.
Another game that has my attention, just because not only am I a Dodgers fan, but look, they have the best record in baseball. They have the highest payroll when you factor in Ohtani's actual money. And they're just a compelling team. And they're facing the Marlins, who have the lowest payroll in all of baseball. Dodgers are the first game on the board as well. High price at -205 as a road chalk. But I guess by Dodgers standards, it's not necessarily that high price. They are slated for a bullpen game. So it's not like one of their studs is going. They just had their 7-game win streak snapped last night on Sunday Night Baseball. And that's an angle and a lens I want to hand over to you, Wes, because I think you have an interesting angle here and take, and I want you to share it with our audience.
Yeah, and keep in mind, by the way, this sample size that I'm going to talk about here is only 4 games into the season. But what you're basically looking at is off of Sunday Night Baseball. Sometimes you get 2 teams and they're off Sunday Night Baseball. You kind of play against them. That's what you look to do, at least long term. Now, last year it was 7-5 to the team that played on Sunday night and then had to go on the road the very next day. And you have that here with the Dodgers tonight. And so far, 0-4 this year for a team that played on Sunday Night Baseball on the road and then have to go on the road again. Now, keep in mind, you're getting the Dodgers and they're playing against the Marlins here. So that's why that's such a big price. But it's happened 4 times this season. I think March 30th, it was the Braves, and then they lost the very next night to the Dodgers. The Cardinals on April 7th lost to the Pirates the very next night. The Cubs on April 14th lost to the Padres. And then the Padres in that situation on April 21st lost the very next night on the road to the Detroit Tigers. So the trend has been against the road team here. Now, it's a big ask for the Marlins, and that's what makes this spot so interesting, because who was Sandy Alcantara's last start against for the Marlins? It was against the Dodgers on the 29th at Chavez Ravine, and he goes 2 2/3, gives up 7 hits, 7 earned, and walks 5 guys. Alcantara, by the way, is going to be a guy you get later in the summer, going to be in high demand at the trade deadline. And that's what the Marlins do, is they trade their good players. So I expect Alcantara is going to be on the move. He's got a little bit of regression coming, or at least positive regression, because if you look, the 2 bad starts he's had this year were at Philadelphia, where he gave up 6 earned and 4 hits in 2 innings. And then the one that I just aforementioned out at Dodger Stadium. So he's been kind of okay at home. Went 6 against the Reds, went 5 2/3 against the Nats, went 5 against the Mets, which was his first win of the season back on April 1st. So I'm really conflicted here, because the angle says play the Marlins, but obviously the Marlins not very good. They just lost 2 of 3 at home to the Athletics over the weekend. So they're 13-20. You've got a stud pitcher that is struggling right now in Sandy Alcantara. There's some way I feel like I want to play the Marlins, though, here in this spot, and I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know if I want to necessarily go with money line or what I want to do here. I think if you're playing the Dodgers, though, Doug, 185 was the opener. I think I'm seeing as high as 215 in the market, and Bet Rivers, I believe, well over $2 in the market. Maybe if you're going to play that instead of laying that price, bank on Alcantara, perhaps struggling again, even if he has positive regression. Could look under 4.5 strikeouts here, but I thought a lot of interesting angles here in this game. And one thing to keep in mind, too, at the Dodgers, are you going to get some off days in the lineup? Are you going to get Ohtani off? Are you going to get Betts out of the lineup? Are you going to get Freeman out of the lineup? Will Smith should be back in because he was a pinch hitter last night. But bullpen game, as you mentioned, Ben Kasparius going to go for the Dodgers. I think he went 3 2/3 last time out. So all of the bullpen arms, I think, except for Anthony Banda and Kirby Yates, because this would be 2 or 3 for Yates. And then Banda worked both games or worked the last 2 days rather at Atlanta. So pretty much all hands on deck from a bullpen perspective for the Dodgers.
I mean, we'll see if Alcantara can sort of maybe not have to regain his 2022 NL Cy Young form, but definitely be better than the gas can he's been at times. An ERA over 8. Now, to your point, it hasn't been every single night. The Dodgers getting to him for 7 earned will certainly spike that ERA, but missed all of last season with an elbow injury. We are sort of desensitized. I always blame Adrian Peterson in the NFL, who, after tearing his ACL, comes back and runs for 1,000,000 yards. You know, we're so desensitized to these injuries and how hard it is to come back and still be at the elite form. But a lot of these athletes do that. We see May has done that for the Dodgers in terms of having arm issues and things like that. But Alcantara is going to have to kind of show me something before I back him. Now, I will say the live over-under right now at Bet Rivers is 9.5. So it's moved up a little bit in the last, little bit, and under's -120 now, but it's 9.5. So the over's getting some money here. And I wonder, and cool stat from our research team and the Bet Rivers, actually on the website here, is Dodgers and Marlins have gone over in 6 straight meetings. They've gone over the total. So the bats come out when the Dodgers and Marlins face off. But I'm just going to lay it with the run line on the Dodgers. To your point, yes, it could be a little bit of a flat spot. Big game against the Braves, Sunday Night Baseball, but it's a short flight. Marlins stink in a lot of ways. I think the Dodgers bullpen is going to be just fine. Now, you're laying 129 with the run line, right? It's a little bit more expensive than it is with other teams, but you get the road team, so you're definitely guaranteed 9th inning ups. So that's one element. And the Dodgers bats really don't go quiet. They've been an absolute beast. To your point, they may rest one of their former MVP award winners, but it feels square, but I'm still going to get involved. The team total for the Dodgers is 5.5. I think they break out the backs. Again, there is a component to the potential of a flat spot. To your point of Sunday Night Baseball, and then also just having faced a guy that you just crushed. And maybe some of that road team on Sunday night travel, you don't get the same sort of focus and professionalism, for lack of a better word, in batting practice that day. So maybe they're coming in a little cold. Some of the teams you mentioned off the Sunday night. Baseball's a different sport than, say, football or basketball, where that edge and that aggression and the flat spot sort of manifests itself. I think it's in sort of the preparation during the day. That's where I would say the flat spot sort of materializes in the sport of baseball versus some of the others.
Yeah, it's not the traditional flat spot, clearly, with, NBA, college basketball, football, anything like that, because you're playing 162 games in a baseball season. So, and as you get later in the season too, certain teams are selling off pieces, certain teams are mailing it in, they're calling up young guys. So I don't usually use the term like flat spot necessarily in baseball,
Right.
even though it's kind of proven to be for the Sunday night. But that trend, I say make your trends your acquaintances and not necessarily your friends, because that's going to be put to the test tonight with the Dodgers against the Marlins. So might see an end to that trend tonight. I'm trying to avoid temptation, though, because there's a part of me that wants to play the Marlins, but maybe it's just best to leave it alone and not look for a bet here.
Well, there's an ugly dog I'm ready to back on this baseball card. We'll get to in a little bit. Let us know your thoughts. Join the conversation. Let us know if there's any dogs that have caught your eye. We're always looking for value, especially in baseball where you have that plus money. It's really hard to lay heavy chalk and be a long-term winner. You got to really look for that value, and the market gets hammered into place in so many ways by the math guys, because math is such a big driver of this sport in general. And Mark B chiming in from overseas, I would imagine, the limited knowledge and are trying to learn more about baseball. What are statistics other than ERA should we focus on? It's a good question, because baseball can be intimidating, is a word I used earlier, but overwhelming at times. And really, it's look, Tim Kirkchin of ESPN says it. He goes, every time I go to the park, I see something I've never seen before. It's really in the NBA. At the end of a game, LeBron's going to get the ball in his hands, or Luka, or whatever. The stars, the ball always goes through them. And football, the quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, is going to get the snap. The ball's going to be in his hands. But in baseball, you just never know. It's the 8th hitter in the lineup with 2 outs in the 9th in a playoff game, and it's the backup, it's a backup second baseman or something, and just crazy stuff happens. We'll get to a stat in a little bit that Wes found that is just another illustration of how baseball is so unpredictable. Betting on baseball takes years off your life. It can be fun, it can be rewarding. Playoff baseball and betting on baseball. So playoff baseball is a fan, and then betting on baseball takes years off your life. So you just got to find the value. A lot of dogs. That's why I like the Padres are passed earlier. I'm on an ugly dog coming up because even the bad teams, unless you're maybe the Rockies, you're going to win a third of your games for the most part, or at least close to a third of the games.
Yeah, one thing I will add to the listener's question there is that I talked about XFIP earlier a little bit for evaluating pitchers, because baseball is unique in that there's so many different approaches. Now, when I handicap a baseball game, I start with the pitchers first before I ever start with the hitters. That's just always where I start. But in terms of stats, you mentioned about what Tim Kirchin says. Don't get too knee deep in the weeds here. Like, if you're not comfortable with that, don't all of a sudden think, oh, I got to know what barrel rate is and all of that stuff. Like, I think that you're getting a little bit too, caught in the mush here. So I would look at your basic stuff, like with the pitchers, evaluating the xFIP versus the ERA. Also, for hitters, I use something, and I'll mention that for a play I have later, called WRC plus, which is weighted runs created. And, and they're splits too, against left-handed pitching, against right-handed pitching. But just try to learn a little something new every day, but don't feel that you have to know every single metric in all of baseball sabermetrics, because there's going to be a new one. Like you were mentioning that story about Tim Kirchin. There's going to be a new one always come out pretty much on a monthly basis, seemingly.
All right, let's get to a couple other games that we picked out, either with good props or a parlay potential. I have a parlay in the next game, but Pirates-Cardinals, not a game I thought we'd get to, but we actually each have sort of an angle on this game that I think is interesting. Miles Michaelis going for the Redbirds, Carmen Majinski going for the Pirates. And for me, I'm looking at the first 5 under 4.5 runs. And why first 5? Is because when you want to isolate the starting pitching matchup, that's something that let's just remove the bullpen, right? Especially on an under with the ghost runners and stuff like that. If I like an under, it's typically because the starting pitching matchup, and I don't even want to get the bullpens or the potential of extra innings in play. So I'd rather do the first 5 under here. It's 4.5. Now, again, that's mixed into the line. It's baked into the line. But I think it starts with this Pittsburgh offense, as bad as it is, among the worst in runs scored, bad team batting average, things like that. And I like what Majinski's done this year. I think he has sort of the right stuff. He's settled down. And when he's gone against some of the he's been hot or cold. He's already faced the Cardinals this year, went 5 innings, 1 earned, with 6 strikeouts. And he did get touched up against Cleveland. But again, when you're I don't want to say it's value per se, but when you're getting a guy who's not like an all-star pitcher or something like that, there's going to be some hot and cold performances. So do I think that it's better that he pitched well against the Cardinals? Yeah, I think it's a favorable matchup if we have results to base it on, unless drastic changes have occurred. So I'm going to go first 5 under, because I also, believe in Michaelis against this Pirates offense.
Yeah, there's a little bit of wiggle room, I think, for us to win both plays here, because I took a little bit of a different approach. And I played the Pittsburgh Pirates team total over, which you can now see at Bet Rivers is 127. Obviously, we always recommend to shop around, but that's a fair number. And it's a leap of faith, obviously, to take the Pirates on a team total over, considering they scored 5 runs in 3 games at home against San Diego. And 4 of them were in, I believe, the Friday night game, had 1 on Saturday, and then got shut out yesterday. It's more of a play, I think, against the Cardinals bullpen that maybe could be a little bit taxed. They had a double dip yesterday in Busch Stadium, actually swept the Mets in the day-night doubleheader out there in St. Louis. So a lot of those guys got used. So it's not really a fate of Michaelis, who kind of is what he is. He's not really a strikeout pitcher, nothing special about his stuff, can get some ground balls, a very efficient veteran pitcher at times, but certainly doesn't have blow away stuff. But it's more of a play against the bullpen where maybe some of the Pirates runs will come late. against an exhausted bullpen. They'd have to use some guys 2 and 3 days, 3 and 4 days. So that was kind of my angle here, but it is a leap of faith against a bad Pirates offense, certainly.
Yeah. You don't have to watch the game either if it's some bad baseball.
Yes.
But if you have the under like I do, but like you said, we can thread the needle here, especially if you're banking on the bullpen being sort of unraveling, then maybe that's how the game script goes, and we can thread the needle and both win our plays. I mentioned an ugly dog, not that there's actually anything such as an ugly actual dog, but an underdog, sometimes there are some ugly ones. And I'm going to have to back the Chicago White Sox. And we have one of those that have joined the conversation. Byron says, Chi Sox are a decent dog. KC can't hit their way out of a wet paper bag.
Unless they're playing Baltimore.
Yes, right. So that was the crazy baseball sort of thing from yesterday is they lead they have the lowest amount of home runs in all of baseball, but then they had 7 dingers yesterday. So do with that what you will. But I think this is a favorable pitching matchup for the White Sox. Yes, they're putrid. They have 10 wins and 24 losses, a win percentage under 300. But again, it's not like the Royals are world beaters here. And I'm going to have to roll with Shane Smith here. I think he's legit as a pitcher. He's been great. And if you do a combined parlay of the White Sox and a pitcher prop in the game of Shane Smith, at least 4 strikeouts, so over 3.5, you get this at Bet Rivers at plus 440. And I believe that these two are correlated because obviously the White Sox offense may not go bananas. I'm going to need Shane Smith to play well. You get some strikeouts against a Royals offense that's not exactly the 27 Yankees here. And I think plus 440, half a unit, something like that. Have some fun with a payout. And when you're back in the White Sox, you're probably going to want to do it when Shane Smith's on the bump.
Yeah, he's been the best pitcher on the staff, I think. And that's a low bar. That's like just when you look at the numbers here, there's not much to choose from, I think, with the White Sox. But he's 2.23 on the ERA, might have a little regression coming at some point. But I can't lay this necessarily with Kansas City because, number one, I think you're buying off this absolute whooping stick performance with the 7 home runs against Baltimore yesterday. But Cole Reagan's last couple times out only went 4 innings in Detroit, walked 3, gave up 5 hits and 5 earned runs in 4 innings. And then against Colorado, this was back on the 24th. It looks like he skipped a start. Only went 3 innings. Now, I know that was a day-night doubleheader, but only went 3 innings, walked 2, gave up 4 earned runs. And so his stuff, which was really good early in the season, by the way, before those last 2 kind of really poor subpar starts, 10 strikeouts against Cleveland, 11 strikeouts against Minnesota, and 10 on the road against Milwaukee. So we know this guy's got good stuff, but a guy with kind of 2 shaky starts like that is not a favorite I'm necessarily looking to delay. Even though I don't get to the window with the White Sox here, I'm definitely not laying the Royals.
Be careful and pick your spots when you're backing. A professional bettor I know has always said something like, I have a lot of great value tickets in the bottom of my trash can, right? Like you can take the plus money where the price just seems so bad, but then you realize they're a big underdog for a reason. But I do think the stars are aligned a little bit, and I like getting the extra boost plus 440. Are you playing with fire a little bit? Sure. There is a way that the White Sox win and Shane Smith doesn't get 4+ strikeout. That happens, but I'd rather have the plus 440 ticket in my pocket with that, needing that outcome than the plus 210. And again, half a unit doesn't have to go crazy, but I do like that combo. You're on the Mariners here as well as we kind of wrap up this card, at least what we see on this card. Take us through that one.
Yeah, Mariners anywhere $7 to like $1.10, pretty much what you're getting market wide. And it's more of a fade of the A's. A's off a 6-game road trip. By the way, they were in Miami. They took 2 of 3 from the Marlins. So now all the way back from Miami out to Sacramento, the temporary home of the A's. We'll see if they ever make it here to Las Vegas. Meanwhile, Seattle, they were also on the road, but they were in Texas yesterday. Got beat 8-1. Now, you saw a little bit with Seattle. If you were watching this game yesterday, they had a young pitcher named Logan Evans, who they stretched out a little bit. I believe he had 6 earned runs through 4 innings. So it's like, okay, they're going to take him out of the game, but they brought him back out for the 5th. And they kind of knew, okay, we're down. I don't want to say it was punting on the game necessarily for Seattle, but might have been because it's like, okay, let's save the bullpen here. Let's let this young guy get some innings, get some experience. And Seattle on the road, despite their loss yesterday, they are number one in WRC plus, and what that means is weighted runs created. They have hit very well on the road. We know Seattle is kind of one of the few pitchers' ballparks left in all of Major League Baseball. So they go on the road, and they've been actually hitting very well, and they've been a nice surprise in the AL West. So it's more of a fade of Oakland, I guess, than a backing of Seattle, because Luis Severino, who did kind of shut them down on opening day, now pitching for the Athletics, the former Yankee, but now he's at home, their temporary home out there in Sacramento. We know we've seen some high totals out there so far there in Sacramento, and a lot of overs in Athletics home games this year. Severino, just a 5.11 ERA at home, going against Bryce Miller, who has started to pitch a little bit better on the road. He's got to keep the walks down. That's the one concern, I think, if you look with Bryce Miller. But I thought that this was a cheap price on Seattle with I keep wanting to say Oakland. They're just called the Athletics. I can't really call them Sacramento because that's their temporary home. But I think that this is a cheap price for Seattle on the road, who's been pretty darn good. The A's bullpen, a little bit taxed. Mason Miller, season high pitches on Saturday. They don't have Tyler Ferguson, so a little bit shorthanded on the back end are the Athletics. So I'm going with the Mariners here, cheap, small favorite on the road.
Mariners are in first place. Now, of all the first place teams in the 6 divisions in Major League Baseball, they have the lowest plus run differential, so they're eking by. The offense, obviously suspect. But again, you're fading the A's, who don't exactly have a world-beating offense themselves. So I think it's a good spot. And you mentioned $1.13 was what it was, but currently at Bet Rivers, it is minus 108. So there's been a little movement, straight coin flip right now in that matchup. So, and join the conversation. Let us know your thoughts as we wrap things up. Also want to remind you, a lot of good content elsewhere here on Betting Weekly YouTube channel. Coming up in a little bit, top of the hour, another news show, Betting Weekly Fast Break. I'll be joined by professional bettor Chris Barcero, discuss the 2 playoff games tonight. Also look ahead in the other playoff games as we have reached the second round of the NBA postseason. And then back at it in the morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, Betting Weekly Live. We also have Betting Weekly Tennis Live. Mitch and Dustin doing a great job. So there's nonstop around the clock action here at Betting Weekly. So we're pleased to add these 2 shows to the lineup and really continue throughout the day as more odds get posted to the board, right? Props are being posted throughout the afternoon, which is why we are slated where we are on the calendar in terms of the time of, so we're getting some props and stuff fresh off the presses as well. All right, Wes, I want to recap some of our top plays. I am going to add the Padres. I like them at the plus money there. So I'll take San Diego. I'm going to play the Cubs and Giants over 7.5 runs, but only for a half unit. I'm on the Dodgers run line, Dodgers over 5.5 runs. I expect the bats to break out against Alcantara. And if he channels some of his better form, so be it. If I'm going to go down on a wager, I don't mind going down, backing a Dodgers lineup. And then I'm going to play that half unit on the parlay between the White Sox money line and Shane Smith, at least 4 strikeouts at plus 440, and get to root for the White Sox on a Monday. What else could you want to do, right?
That's a hell of a way to start your week, isn't it, Doug?
Go Southsiders. In the case of the Mondays, we'll amplify it with having to bet on the White Sox and root them in.
That's where we kind of miss Hawk Harrelson, especially when you bet the White Sox, because it's like he feels our pain. He totally feels our pain. You want somebody rooting. You want a homer rooting you in on that one for sure.
All right, what do you got in terms of just putting a bow on all your plays for today?
Matthew Boyd over 5.5 strikeouts. You probably got to lay about $1.30 now, $1.35. I think he has a good outing against the Giants tonight. And then we mentioned just a moment ago, Seattle. Cheap price on the road, anything 110 around that area, laying against the Athletics. And then the Pittsburgh Pirates taking an offense that got shut out at home yesterday by the Padres and scored 5 runs in the last 3 days. I think they get some in the back end, even if Michaelis is effective for St. Louis. Over 3.5 on the team total, minus 127 still right now at Bet Rivers.
Yeah, I like it. Look, if I know, Wes, you play a lot of dogs in baseball and other sports, and if you're going to play some quote unquote chalk, I think it's good to, smart to, it's okay. There's value on favorites sometimes, and all those money lines and those prices are pretty low. So Otherwise, baseball can really catch up to you if you're laying a lot of chalk, because we talked about the randomness of the sport, and you got to expect the unexpected sometimes. And it's really hard to sort of get ahead when you're just constantly laying it. But those prices are manageable. And like you said, they're value plays and things along those lines. All right. Well, that does it for us. We appreciate everyone joining in. You're all part of history. The first ever Betting Weekly Hardball here on this channel. Wes, awesome to connect as well. I'll be seeing you shortly as well. You'll also be on Betting Weekly Fast Break later in the week. A lot of us, we're just going to be rotating throughout, and Adam the Bull is going to be joining us tomorrow on Betting Weekly Hardball. But good to have you, man.
Yeah, good to be here. I hope I can gloat again about the Indiana Pacers. Your future Indiana champion, Indiana Pacers. At least I'm trying to manifest that into existence. But a good start last night.
Yeah, and Shane, as Shane said, take us to the promised land. So we appreciate those chiming in and joining the conversation. So thanks to everyone. Thanks to our awesome staff behind the scenes. A lot of fun to get this first show in the books, and we'll be back here tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. And again, Betting Weekly Fast Break. We'll break down some hoops action tonight, top of the hour at 3 Eastern. And professional bettor Chris Massaro will be joining us then. For Wes Reynolds, I am Doug Kezirian, and we'll see you next time.
It's time to start. Enjoy the show.